Okay, greetings everyone out there in Zoom land. This is Bard 101. I am your intrepid instructor. I'm Myri Blackadder now. Used to be Myri Nick Siobhan, but I changed my name to be less Irish and more Scottish. Aha! 1997 Gaelic is, what I was working off of when I submitted my name in Kait when I was 17. So yeah. It's a little more updated now for my persona. I live in the great kingdom of Antir. I'm the current Bardic champion of Dragon's Lair. I have been the kingdom champion of Antir and the Bardic champion of Blathanor, so I've got a lot of competition experience. So I view things usually from a competition lens. This is going to be kind of a more, it's called the quick and dirty approach. So it's kind of a holistic general overview of how to get started in the great tent that is Bardic in the SCA, because it is a very big tent and we want all of you to come play with us. So we've got a few friends here today joining us from we've got someone from Atlantia, we've got someone from Scald, I just forgot, our baby kingdom, Avacol, right? Is that it? Yes? No? I don't know. Avacol, yes. Our baby kingdom, Scald from Griffin Eye News is joining us. So if I mess up, it'll end up on their next news channel show. So welcome to Bard 101, a quick and dirty crash course. Thank you for joining me. Let's see, let's get started. Oh, maybe we don't want to switch. There it is. My buttons aren't working. Okay, so topics we're going to cover today. What was a bard historically? What is a bard in the SCA? What can you do to become a bard? Some sources you can look into, and then we'll have a chance for some questions. I've also just tonight added a little secondary advice and etiquette portion, which I used to just give verbally, but I went ahead and made some nice slides for y'all. And if you see cats roaming back and forth, I apologize. My cats are a-holes. So what is a bard historically? Well, it's interesting because we use that word as it kind of means all performing arts in the SCA, right? Historically, where bards came from, Bardic schools started in Ireland and made their way over to Scotland in the 11th century. Children of noble blood, from noble houses, were sent to these colleges where they learned hundreds of poems by heart. They had to learn a specific Bardic language, which was specialized to this educated and upper crust caste system of people. They learned this language style in order to compose their own poems, their praise poetry, and their stories. A Scottish and Irish bard, their main job was to extol the virtues of the lord or king that they were working for, the bravery and the prowess in battle or of their family, their wisdom as a just ruler, as well as to talk about the beauty and grace of the lord or king's wife. A bard could make or break your reputation in court, absolutely. Oftentimes they would satirize their political rivals in poem or in song. They could flat out make fun of a particular leader or a rival to the bard's employing lord. It was not good to be in the sights of an angry bard. Their job also entailed keeping the history of the employing family, the family line, the local customs, the great battles that were fought in, and local law. They also did things like wills and inventories and a lot of legal work, which I really enjoy being a bard in the SCA because that ties into being a paralegal to me in my mundane life. Bards also held an extremely special place in Celtic society. Oftentimes, they were almost as highly regarded as the lords and kings that they served under. They spent years learning the Bardic arts, and they not only memorized hundreds of poems or stories, they were specifically trained to create their original works in the high language of the bards, as we've kind of gone over already. So historically, the bard was the historian, the storyteller, source of news, the political satirist, more than just entertainment. They were a major part of Celtic society. All of that little bit of information that I just gave you can also be found in the Bardic source book here, which is a fabulous historical source about Irish Celtic Bardic schools. It is on Amazon and it's like $25. It's not too expensive. I actually borrowed a copy from my current Baron that I'm serving under, and when I am finished with it, I'm going to be passing it on to the next worthy bard for their edification. So that's historically. Bard being a Gallic word, meaning something specific to Gallic culture, Celtic culture. But what is a bard in the SCA? And that's where we get into this wonderful big tent that I love to say is all welcoming. So the brilliant thing about the SCA is bard is our catch-all term for everything. You can be a musician, a storyteller, a poet, an actor, a singer. I have bardic friends that do puppetry. I have friends that do dancing because for their culture, dance tells a story. They're from an Eastern culture. So looking at this from a world view, you know, to the Scots, a bard would tell the epic poems and they would brag about the history of their landed lord or king. In Asia, dance was used to tell stories. We have this amazing worldview that we can pull from depending on our personas in the time period that we are trying to affect in our SCA play. So as the SCA continues to evolve, really so do the bardic arts. And when the SCA first started, there was a lot of, you know, I don't want to say guys and gals, a lot of people, you know, they had their bardic stick and their tokens on it and their books, and there was a lot of filking and there was a lot of circles and singing of these filks around circles, or what was thought to be Celtic songs. But it's really and wonderfully, I think so, in the last 50 years, evolved to include so much more. And I'm really excited about that because that means your style of bardic and my style of bardic, while they don't necessarily come from the same time period or the same worldview, we're both entertaining and enriching the medieval culture that we're trying to create in the SCA, because after all, we are kind of our own little strange thing, aren't we? It's from a sociology standpoint, the SCA is enormously fascinating, but I digress. So as the SCA continues to evolve, the bardic arts do, and we have so many bards in Ontario that we have different types of performing arts. We probably have a bard for every type of performing arts. The phrase used as a catch-all, and it's fairly interchangeable. So I don't want you to think I can't be a bard because I don't sing Irish songs. I don't ever want you to tell yourself I can't be a bard because I don't play the harp. These are old, and for the SCA, they're outdated and they don't serve any of us to make a welcoming environment. So I ask you to be as inclusive with yourself as you would be to others, and go ahead and give yourself that grace to try something new and out of the box. What am I? What are you? Well, I'm a bard. I was mainly 14th century. I've moved myself more into 16th century. I play a bit in both. I've moved to 16th century because it was easier for me to document a female writer, someone who could support herself through writing. While there hasn't been anything that I have found in my research that says women couldn't be bards, there also wasn't anything saying specifically that women were bards. So I moved my persona from 14th to 16th century, where there had already been women from the 15th century forward writing, not necessarily to support yourselves. We have to get more into Tudor England before you find women supporting themselves through their writing. One of my focuses there is the first Tudor female secular poetess, Isabella Whitney. So I'm a bard. I call myself a bard. I'm Scottish. I try to do Celtic tales, Gallic songs. That is my focus. However, you don't have to call yourself that. There's a lot of different terms that you don't hear as much in the SCA, but I think if you feel mean more to you and what it is that you are performing, excuse me, take a quick sip here. That's bardic advice later on. Please always have some water with you. So a troubadour or a troubadour, for instance, the class of lyric poets and poet musicians that were often knights, flourished through the 13th to the end of the 11th to the end of the 13th centuries, chiefly in the south of France and northern Italy. And their major theme was courtly love. They sang songs of courtly love. So if bard doesn't resonate with you, but this time period and this era and this area of the world resonates with you and your persona, then maybe consider yourself a troubadour. And then you can focus your, not just your persona work, but your research, excuse me, the word escaped me. You can focus your research into looking into troubadour or troubadour songs, and that will help you find more songs that maybe appeal to you. A jongleur, which I think is a wonderful word. I wish people would call themselves this more, or we heard it more, or it was kind of just used so we could feel free to use it. The itinerant medieval entertainer, the juggler, acrobatic musician, recitation of maybe short poems or prose. I love this. I think a lot of people fall into this and don't think that they have another word they can call themselves. So if you're not comfortable with Bard because it just doesn't make sense for your persona, think about jongleur, especially if you're somebody who likes to do a variety of things. I have a great friend. She left on tier. I can't think of the state she moved to, but she's really what I would consider a jongleur because she does these kind of fun science experiment type performances because she's a science teacher that are geared towards being magic tricks. And it's really a lot of fun. A skald, we have a skald here with us today. I think if you look under Griffin Eye News, we've got a skald right there. So in ancient Scandinavia, right, the composers and reciters of poems honoring heroes and their deeds, telling those massively long poems and stories, snore. But if that appeals to you, then please, by all means, be a skald. I like to encourage everyone to be not historically accurate necessarily, but as specific to their persona as they can be and as they want to be. Because I find that really personally exciting when you can hone your performance and your research into something your persona would have actually known. You don't have to do that. I'm kind of an uber nerd when it comes to Bard stuff. And so that's where I kind of laser focus. If I'm in the 16th century, then I feel I should only know songs from X to X and from this region to this region because my persona was educated as thus. You don't have to do this. You can learn, sing, perform, prose, anything you like. My whole point is that there are other options for you out there if the term Bard you feel does not speak to you and your performance style. So really, it all depends on you and what it is that you are looking to do in the SCA. All right, I was just checking my chat. I don't see any questions. I'll take a quick water break. And as I said, this is the quick and dirty crash course, so I probably won't keep you here a full hour. This is kind of the general overview, and I think it helps get your feet wet if you don't already know about Bardic arts. Question I got a lot when I was Kingdom Champion, because you got that big cloak with a giant lion on it and everybody knows who you are, is how do I become a bard? And honestly, the answer is show up and perform. It can be a competition. You can just do competitions. I tend to do mostly competitions. You can just do fireside Bardic. That's amazing. And it's deeply entrenched in our SCA history. You can do these online Bardics, which have been going on now for damn near 20 years, which is a wonderful way to learn new pieces and meet new people and practice your performance pieces. You could do feast hall performances, you know, if they want someone to give that medieval feel during a feast. So really, it's just dependent on you to show up and do the thing, just like it would if you wanted to be a fighter. You would show up with your armor and you do the thing. Some ways that you can kind of break in there material wise. There's SCA songbooks, Elf Hill Times. In the 80s, there were a ton of filks written by bards in the SCA, and they were put in these volumes of books. I think I have 5 or 6 that were passed down to me by somebody who was leaving the SCA because they had moved. I think they were older and just wanted to give out their SCA stuff. But you can ask around the community, chat rooms, Facebook, see if anybody has copies of these or they can lend you some. I will say caveat, be careful with some of those filks. We'll touch on that a little bit later. There's what's period-esque or perioid, you might hear them called songs. And that usually refers to something that sounds medieval. So generally people use that phrase when they mean a song that's original or it's about the SCA in some way or a person in the SCA, but it's written in a period style. So if you were to write an epic poem about the final battle in, let's say, Crown Tourney, which was yesterday, On Tears Crown Tourney was streamed for us for the first time live ever. It was amazing. And I watched the new Crown Prince. Just that man moves faster than the speed of light, I think. So there could probably be some pretty awesome poems written about that. So that would be like a period-esque performance piece. There's also something referred to as like folk tunes. I'm sure you've never heard that before, but there's a lot of Irish, Scottish songs from the 18th century, 19th century, sea shanties. There's all these things that we associate with medieval play that are perfectly acceptable. One of our Bardic champions here in Ontario, Runa Harris' daughter, does amazing call and response, Irish call and response songs, and they're a hell of a lot of fun. She made it to the finals in the last Ontario Bardic Championship, and it really gets the audience involved when you do those type of stories. So anything that would fit within that kind of realm of it sounds like that 10-foot rule, but with sound, right? It feels medieval, or it seems medieval, or people have always thought it was medieval. Go ahead and perform it, unless it's a period only circle, but we'll touch on that in a bit. So your original songs in a period-esque styles, period-esque, obviously, we already talked about that. Filks, contrafacting in period is what that's called. So if you were to take the tune of Green Sleeves and you were to put words to it about your baron, you have just created a contrafact. Those were extremely popular in period, mostly because you could hand somebody a broadside, one of those broadside ballad sheets, and they would already know the tune because everybody knows My Sharona, and so they could all sing the words along to that tune. And it makes your audience participation go up. And frankly, it's kind of easy. I wrote a filk once to House of the Rising Sun, the animals version, about my baron and baroness, and it worked well because I was in a feast hall, so I could belt it out. It's not medieval. I was challenged to write a song on the spot. I went with House of the Rising Sun. So consider yourself a little open and write some of those if that's how you want to slowly get your feet wet and step in, and then you can move into the more period-esque or folk tunes or period style songs and stories. Make sure you ask if the circle that you're going to be in or the performance space is period only. There are what we all know are called enchanted grounds, where when you go in there, you are expected to be in persona, to keep your phones and your cameras and things put away. And so that circle, like I think Duke Caradoc still runs a period only circle, a enchanted ground circle at Pensick. So you want to ask ahead of time. Generally, they are advertised though, if they're going to be a period only circle, but it's totally okay to ask. You want to know what you're going into. So if you don't have any period pieces, you can still go and listen, but you don't want everybody giving you side eye when you decide to do a piece from Cats because you didn't realize it was a period only circle. For competition, you can do period stories, songs, poems, instrumentals, whatever. Generally in a competition at a kingdom level, that's usually required. Here in Ontario, you need to have 2 period pieces, and one can be an original SCA style periodoid, period-esque piece. I know that each kingdom is different, so I want you to take what I say with a grain of salt and the understanding that it's been licked by Ontario, and so it's going to be mostly an Ontario plate. But in competition, I mean, they're usually raising the bar, so expect that you'll probably have to have something period, and that again will be advertised ahead of time. You can do your originals in a period style, which I have done. The Kingdom Championship that I won, I wrote a play scene about, again, the same Baron that I'd written that other song about and his love for his wife. But I did it in sort of a Shakespearean iambic pentameter, commedia dell'arte kind of feel to it, where I basically made fun of him. And luckily he liked me enough to where I wasn't kicked out of the barony. And everybody got the joke because he's a well-known knight. Feel free to branch out into that a little bit. That kind of, you can be a little edgy and make fun of people, but make sure you have that relationship with them beforehand. I don't want anybody being talked to by a king at some point. Also, SCA songs can be welcome in competition. I have done baronial competitions where a period piece wasn't required and you could just do SCA songs or SCA originals, and that's perfectly fine. But these are just all ways that you can become a bard or break into the bardic world in your area. The Brave and Bonny Host is probably what I would consider Ontario's theme song. And this is just to give you an idea of a piece that's very well known. It is an SCA piece. People have used it in competitions, or people sing it in a feast hall, and I've heard that down in Summits, they all sing in their feast halls together and sing-alongs. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not.
It sometimes happens.
Okay, see, so you might find yourself not knowing the words. So you can always ask around, ask your local bards, ask maybe your chatelaine if they have a bard, if they can get you in touch with somebody who might know what your local or your theme songs for your area are. The other thing that I've done in the past is I've Googled SCA songs, and there are some websites dedicated to local songs of different kingdoms. So that can be a lot of fun to see what other kingdom, like there's that anthropology of other kingdoms that I think is always interesting to look into and delve into. So you can YouTube this song if you don't know it, and it'll pop right up and you can hear someone sing it. I mean, there's some great SCA songs out there. One that's really famous that you probably heard going around a ton on TikTok this summer was my Savage Daughter, which was written by Windrith Bergen's daughter and is an SCA song and has always been an SCA song, and it's not a traditional Viking song, and there's a lot of people that think it is and will apparently die on that hill. Windrith Bergen's daughter is the original author and singer, so if you see anybody else trying to sell that as their song, it's an SCA song. Windrith wrote it. Sorry, a little bit of a soapbox there. Sources, we've kind of already talked about the first one. SCA songbooks are great. The thing I will say about a lot of the SCA songbooks, I haven't seen any in the last 20 years. I mean, they're all pretty early. Some of the filks, in my opinion, use some language that can be triggering. And I would encourage you, before you perform anything, is to really look at it from that lens of, if you jokingly sing a song that says that we're Vikings and so we rape women, that's not necessarily going to be well received by everyone. Really kind of look at your audience, where you're at, and think about that you might be singing something that might be inappropriate and might upset some people. Not everybody ascribes to that, but I'm going to tell you that you probably aren't going to want to sing every song that you find. That's a SCA licked, take it with a grain of salt opinion, trademark me. Child ballads, there's over 300 songs in this ballad selection, all written down, I think it was like in the 1800s. And it's that traveling around Ireland, writing down the ancient songs kind of thing. But there's some great songs in there. I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of them. Gypsy Rover, for one. Unfortunately, that's a word we can't use. And again, in polite company, as catchy as the song is, but there are songs in child's ballads that you would have heard. Tudor madrigals. If you Google Tudor madrigals, these are fantastic group songs, obviously, because they're madrigals. So if you have a local group and you want to get people singing, that's a good source. Guillaume de Marchat, who's the 14th century, he was an epic, prolific writer of secular songs and monophonic pieces for one voice. I love Guillaume Marchat. When I won Kingdom, I sang one of his monophonic songs, and I think they're absolutely beautiful. As far as period music goes, it doesn't have to be stodgy. And another question I get a lot is, well, I don't want to sing religious songs. And I get that. You have to understand that, for a certain time period, songs weren't really written down unless they were for the church. Looking for secular songs, they're out there. Just know, depending on where you're at, if it's a Christian country at a certain time period, it might be harder for you to find songs that you could document that are period. Now, if you never need a period song, if you're only going to sing around fires, or you only want to enter competitions that don't require period music, that's fine. But it's just fair warning that if you are entering a competition and you need a period piece and you don't want to sing religious songs, you're going to have to maybe expand your search to another country or other time period. The Elder or Eddas in Norse, which are those long, beautiful, epic poems that go on and on and on. And if you can memorize it, I will give you a cookie, because I sure couldn't. The other wonderful, sorry, my cat wants out. Your local bards. We don't bite. We try to be friendly. People are people. You're going to talk to some people and they might be snobby. You're going to talk to other people and they might geek out and freak you out, because we want to talk about this thing that we love, this performance that brings us so much joy. It's been really hard for me not having a lot of events, because I really enjoy performing in person. It's hard for me to perform online. But you can keep talking to enough people until you find the one that clicks for you. But I think it's great to branch out and get to know your other bards, mostly so we can all support each other, but also some people might have some pieces or some research that you've never even thought of that opens up whole new avenue for you of things that you want to look into. You would also just Google things like Celtic literature. And there's this link here, this Mary Jones. It's an old website, and I don't know how much longer it's going to be up there, but she has a whole bunch of Scottish and Irish and Welsh like stories on there. And the dates are on there for, like 1804 and the dates of the stories. But what I think about that is it's just good to get started somewhere. Learn those Victorian Celtic stories, and that will help you branch out into either finding period pieces, or maybe that's your niche and you're just going to do those stories, or writing your own pieces. And what I have done is I have looked into Scottish like fables, but more so like, okay, what are the boogeymen? They have the Ben Nye, they have the green washerwoman, and the Irish have the banshees. So I've looked into what the local, just the lores are, the names of the boogeymen or the names of the elves. And then I've written stories using those, not the stories already written down, but just using those as my touchstone pieces. So I wrote a story about the washerwoman that is original, but it uses the Ben Nye as my focus point. Advice: bring a bottle of water with you at all times. You're going to get a dry mouth or a dry throat. You will. A small sip of whiskey or a little hot water with honey will help to warm up your vocal cords. You can't really, sit in a circle and do your me me mo mo moo. You might not have a chance, or you might have been sitting for a while, and so you're unable to warm up. So a little bit of warm water and honey if you don't imbibe, but whiskey, just the tiniest sip, something like that will help warm up your vocal cords, because you don't want to injure that. That's your instrument. Know your venue. We kind of touched on this already. Is it a period only? Is it an enchanted grounds? Knowing your venue is important. SCA originals are period-esque okay. Is it a body bard? They have body bardics all the time, usually after 10. Is it a family story time bard? Is it a competition? You're going to want to pick your pieces that you're going to be performing based on your venue. Also, really important, I didn't write this down. Know who. If you're performing songs, you need to know who wrote them, and you need to give credit to the person who wrote it. A period song, while it belongs in the public use, you still want to say this is a Guillermo Schott song. But specifically for songs that might have been written by Scadians, they could be sitting there with you. You don't know. Their brother, cousin, husband, wife, sibling, nibbling could be sitting there. So you want to make sure you're giving credit for the performance that you're doing. And if you happen to know that person is there, always good to check in with them and make sure they're okay with you doing their original song, because they might actually want to do that. Watching your times is going to be important. You want to be reasonable with how long you take. For songs, you figure 3 minutes, 5 minutes max. For stories, really 8 minutes max. I can go on for 20 or 25 minutes. Nobody wants to hear me talk for 25 minutes unless they're coming to see me specifically perform. And others are sitting there waiting for their chance. So we don't want to be time hogs. Make sure you bring your lyrics, your notebook, your Bardic book that you write in. I know it seems like kind of well, of course I would, but sometimes it's easy to forget what our lines are, or that point in the story where maybe you just have your bullet points written down for your story. So it's good to have that in front of you. So bring your instrument, bring your tools, bring what you need with you. I don't rely on my memory as much as I used to. Even sometimes before I go out there, I'm always off book, but sometimes I'll scan my notes real quick just to make sure I'm not blanking on anything. When you can, try to make eye contact, involve your audience when possible. This is just a part of a dynamic performance. You don't have to do this, but later on when you get better at that piece, I would say definitely try to make eye contact, reach out to the audience, and don't be staring at your book the whole time, especially if you're interested in competition. That's most important for competition. Basic etiquette here. You want to look at the rotation of the Bardic circle. So there's pick, pass, play. There's a general pass. There's something called pop-up circle. I've never seen a pop-up circle where people just kind of randomly start performing in no discernible order. I imagine that would be like herding kittens. I can't imagine just letting bards decide who's going to go when. For the most part, you're going to see it's going to go around in a circle, like passing to the left, like in roulette. So if it's passing to the left, and I'm singing, you don't want to sit down to my left if you can help it, because you've just cut off that person that might have been waiting for an hour to perform. So you want to sit to my right, or vice versa if it's passing to the right. Or if you can't, just ask where's a good place, if there's somewhere that someone can make room for you, because you don't want to necessarily assume that you're okay to plop yourself right into between those two performers, that maybe they've got something worked out between them. There's also a circle style called pick, pass, play, where when it goes around to you, you can pick someone to perform something. And then once they're done performing, it'll go back to the person next to you, not necessarily staying with the first person you picked to perform. You can pass. You don't have to perform. You can just be an audience. You don't have to pick someone to perform. You can just say, I pass. And please, feel free to do that if you're not ready to perform. Or you can play, which is pretty obvious, right? You can play your instrument, sing your song, tell your story, recite your poem, make a joke about your baron, whatever works for you. Don't tune your instruments or be flipping through your materials while others are performing. This is basic, and it still happens sometimes. You don't want to have a giant flashlight on your book when somebody next to you is trying to sing and you're glaring in their eye. Just general kindness and respect when others are performing. Sometimes people don't have that. I like to encourage it. Don't talk during a performance. Loudly. Obviously, we might have to whisper to somebody, but try not to talk. Don't sing along with them. Don't step on their performance. It's okay to laugh. And I know this happens a lot with us, like in court, somebody says something funny and everybody laughs in court, but sometimes performances are extremely emotional, and you don't want to necessarily make a joke when someone's performing or say something that might throw them off their game or affect their performance. Again, as is always in all things in life, a caveat, they might be looking for that feedback. They might look to you and ask you a question and wait for your response, but read the room and be respectful of that performer's time, because you want them to be respectful of your time. Try to practice your material beforehand. Practice, practice, practice. This is always important. Practice, practice, practice. And if you can't, I always like to let everybody know, hey, brand new song here. I might have some issues with the lyrics. I'm going to be looking at my book. If everybody could just give me just warning you all, first time I'm performing this song. I like doing that. You don't have to, but if you practice beforehand, obviously you're less likely to choke up or forget your words or blank out, because performing, whether you're performing in a Bardic circle or in a feast hall or in a competition, can be nerve-wracking for some people. You might feel great at a competition for some reason, but in a circle where it's much more intimate and people are staring at you two inches away from you, that's harder for me than being on stage in a performance. So practice, practice. And as this is the quick and dirty version, this is our question time. So if anybody had any questions about anything that I didn't cover, or if you'd like clarification for anything, please feel free to ask them now.
Do you have a preferred style for yourself?
Storytelling is my niche. That's my jam. Storytelling and spoken, like poetry, performance poetry. I do sing a bit. I don't consider myself a really strong singer, but I like to have something to throw out there real quick. So every once in a while, someone's like, perform something. And you're going, oh, crap. Yeah.
Right.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's when I wind up with inappropriate limericks myself. But
right.
Yeah. I just saw a question come across from the Griffin in the Sky. It's the same question His Excellency had earlier. So you can just,
just
he's asking with.
Yeah, I see that now. Thank you, Skull. Bard's Night is coming back when, in all honesty, it's work has been so intensely stressful. I've kind of lost my desire to create my art. So that's been a little bit of a roadblock. So yeah, Bard's Night will come back when I can think of questions to ask people.
We understand. We took a 2-month hiatus ourselves this summer to just kind of rest and refresh, as it were.
Yeah, it's fun until it's not. And then when you're like, oh God, I have to do this tonight, don't I? It's a good time to take a break.
What do you do with small children who have lots of questions right in the
Ask them if they'd like to perform, because sometimes they want to be involved but don't know how to ask.
Wow.
Ask
wanna-
if they have any songs that they like, and it doesn't have to be an SCA song. I had Duke Morgan's child sing for me once. I think it was a lullaby, and it was lovely. And they ran over and sang me a lullaby, and they ran back to their encampment. It was really nice.
They're great little kids.
Okay, well, it's
Right.
like Saoirse.
Well, they're
The first time
singing.
I ever heard Savage Daughter was actually being sung by a smallish child. And the prince at the time was encouraging me to stand up and go stand with the other baronesses and the princess and bond. And I'm like, I am literally trying not to cry as I sit here at the table listening to this for the first time.
Yeah.
Let a baroness weep.
Can the Baroness just cry, please?
Yeah, I'm having feelings right
I
now.
do not need encouragement from a man.
That's right. Let me weep in my own feminine way.
And that actually brings up a good point. So if you're performing and you're getting emotional, it's okay to stop and take a breath and take a beat and a couple deep breaths to try to recenter yourself, because sometimes your performance is going to bring up emotions you maybe weren't aware were there. You might start singing something, and for some reason you think of your mom. You might start singing something and you think of your dog. If you can, pause in your performance if it allows, and even if it doesn't allow, give yourself that grace. And if you are too emotional, it's okay to stop. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm gonna close it there. Thank you. And I want everybody else who's around to please, just accept that, and please don't ever push a person into performing. When I say ask the child if maybe they'd like to be involved, we don't also want to push them into being involved, right?
Yeah. I would add to that as well. I grew up in church where music was a thing. If it is a well-known song, it's totally an option to say, if you know the song, sing with me.
Right, exactly.
Because it gives you the time to collect yourself if you're going to collect yourself, or just to end pleasantly. But I did see we had a couple of other questions come in as well.
Oh, great.
So there's one right above that, Clovis. It says, are you allowed to use your phone or other non-period devices, or I need glasses. I need glasses. Devices or tools. There we go.
I mean, it's not 1995 anymore. I think that if that's where you've got your pieces is on your tablet or on your phone, that's where you have them. I went to Ontario West War and sat in on an interkingdom circle, and the bards in the West have like 3-inch notebooks filled with songs. And that to me was like, I can't carry all that around. That's not going to fit in my basket. I mean, yeah, if that's what you're working with, that's what you're working with. I'd suggest turning on your blue light filter so you're not glaring in your face, around the fire when you're trying to perform. But yeah, it's totally valid. Mistress Gala, who's my Laurel, sang The Brave and Bonny Host.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and she was reading it off of her phone just this weekend, just yesterday. So yeah, totally okay. I would say if you were in a competition, you want to be off book as much as possible. Or I have one of those pretty like leather, it's a thin leather thing, but you can put your phone there and you look like you're singing off some sheet music, and it looks very nice.
I think that's one of those projects we were supposed to finish during this pandemic, was actually to make specifically for our ceremonial for court, the fake book, so we can fit an iPad or some form of tablet in there.
Yeah, and I think they make them. You could probably, if you're not handy with leather, I think they make for iPads and tablets, they look like leather books. So yeah, I'd say if that's what you're comfortable with and that's where you have all your pieces, definitely use it.
I mean, we are Scadians, so picking up random new hobbies.
Right. We're Scadians. But yeah, a lot of interesting stories that I have found that I like to use are on my Google Books, because they're free, like Scottish medieval stories, but they're all those kind of Victorian, versions of medieval stories, but it's still a great starting point for me. And they're all on my Google Books on my tablet. So yeah, I hate saying you're allowed. I mean, you're a human person and you're an adult. So yes, you are allowed. I guess if it's a period circle, you'd want to keep that covered, obviously.
Yeah, but fortunately, I mean, like you said, there are a lot of really excellent options for doing that. Even if you don't have leatherworking as a skill, it's
Yeah.
pretty easy to fake a book of some kind. So yeah. Ugh. Clovis, add that back onto the list. Oh yes, it looks like there was another question. It says, can drum circles coexist with bardic circles?
Yeah, I haven't seen a drum circle in so long. I don't even know if I could speak to that. I mean, when I was first playing in Kaid in the mid to late 90s, there were bardic circles and there were drum and dance circles, and they were two separate things because they were serving two separate purposes, right? Drum circles I mean, good Lord, there could be 10, 12, 20 people all drumming together and vibing, which is amazing, and dancers. Whereas the bards, it's mostly solo performances. So I don't know how you could coexist the two, because some of those dances go on for so long and then you're like, all right, everybody stop dancing, I'm going to tell a story now. Yeah, I don't know if it would work. I think if you as an individual drummer wanted to go to a bardic circle and do a little drum piece, that would be entirely different, and it's an instrument, and that's a valid, that's your valid bardic art. But I don't know that you could get a bunch of drums and a bunch of bards together and expect any kind of cohesion. That'd be hard, because yeah, they're just completely different purposes. They're kind of at cross purposes. And I've noticed at drum circles, there's a lot of loud talking outside of the drum circle. It tends to draw a louder crowd where you maybe wouldn't be able to hear somebody performing and telling everybody to be quiet. I've had a lot of people go, well, I don't want to be told to be quiet at a feast just because someone's going to sing a song. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
I'm going to go sing over there.
Yeah, I was a music minor in college, and we would have, they had drum circles. And I think you brought up doing it as a bardic performance. I think it's important to remember that the kind of drum circle performance length tends to be substantially longer and more freeform.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem. I think if you're like one person with a drum and you could do your 3 to 5 minute specific song thing, but granted, 5 minutes is a long time for one drum. Yeah. So I think you'd have to streamline your song performances. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can be tricky.
Yeah, and with any instrument you'd have to. I mean, I can't go in there with a harp and do 15 minutes on a harp either.
What?
Yeah. I can't play harp anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we struggle with as performing Scadians, is historically these performances would take, half an hour, and so we look at the literature and it's like, and the Scald spoke for 3 hours on the,
there's nothing else going on too, so
but the modern person has, okay, I have the attention span of a gnat anyway, so I may not be the best example, but yeah.
Well, there's a lot going on at events. There might be a step down party, there might be a drumming circle, there might be a half cosplay thing going on, there might be a visual. So yeah, it would be really hard to hold somebody's attention for an hour. I would say if you want to do a single performance for something, like June Fair is something that we do out here in Ontario, for those of you not in Ontario, but like a public demo type thing where they're like, hey, we need demos. Can you demo? Can somebody demo? That is a fantastic opportunity for you to do a solid performance of your own for 20, 30 minutes or whatever the demo window is that they give you. So I've gone to June Fair before and I've performed for a half an hour, and it was mostly mundanes and my Laurel and my real good friend, but I performed for a half an hour. So there are opportunities to do that. And those open public events where they're calling for demos are always a great place for you as a performer to get out there and be like, I can do that. I've got a half hour of drum material. Cool. Go do it. Because you may not have that long ever at a bardic circle. They may get around to you twice, depending on how many bars there are.
Very true. Well, it's like when I try to tell jokes in court, and I mean for it to be like a 30-second joke, and it winds up being like 3 minutes, and my populace is looking at me like, we can still tar and feather you, Your Excellency.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't.
Speaking
I
on
didn't
behalf
vote
of
for
her
you.
population, we have never ever thought that.
It's like,
You're-
how are you, my Baroness? I didn't vote for you.
Right. I didn't vote for me either. The craziest thing. Did you have something you wanted to say, Your Excellency?
No.
No, okay. Sorry, he's been diligently making us dinner, so.
Good
Is
Lord
there-
husband.
He's a very good husband. I don't remember if you, is there anything that you wished that someone had told you that you've learned along the line?
I think I covered a lot of the things that I would have wished to known. There is, when I did my first competition though, and I didn't understand why somebody was handing packets of paper out to everybody. It's like, what are they doing? The know what your documentation requirements are beforehand, and be prepared to either orally give your documentation, which I prefer, or you've got your little packets of paper to hand out to everybody. That shocked me. I didn't understand what was happening. I was like, okay, why is that little girl giving everybody packets? But she was like a 16-year-old. She was great. She's an amazing performer, but she was giving everybody packets of paper when I have no idea what's happening here right now. So I just sang a Gaelic song, and I did a story, and I sang another song, and I was like, okay, but I had no idea what was really happening. So ask or review the rules closely, and then ask some more, just so you know what you're getting yourself into. So you don't feel like, oh no, I've done something wrong. She ended up winning, coincidentally.
It's crazy how that happens sometimes. I hate it when that happens. I'm like, dude, I just gave you the best winged performance of my life. And
I was hilarious.
Right? And this person who researched and has documented, this is ridiculous.
What do you mean a period French song? I don't even, what? Huh? Ugh.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? I can say like 2 stock phrases in French, and that's about it.
Yes.
And one of them is I do not speak French, which is my go-to in any new language.
It's good to know.
Yeah, right. Oh. But yes, was there anyone else who had questions? Because otherwise I can talk forever, and just FYI. Our teacher didn't know this when we first contacted her about teaching.
No, because I've definitely never interviewed you before.
Oh, that's true. I forgot. Dang it. People should stop interviewing me, because now people know like my foibles. So Zuleika, I'm sorry. I think I do.
I was merely confirming that you can, in fact, talk forever.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So can we have the slides emailed to us afterwards?
Why don't you drop your email for me in chat, and I will snag that, okay?
Thanks.
Yeah. And if you're wondering, that's me. That's a very wonderful bard, current Kingdom Bardic champion on Dramica. That is Baroness Angharat Vertrinolf, Baron Gernon, and his lovely wife, Berenice, and Dudley the dog. Baron Gernon is the one I make fun of regularly. Wins me
I've got
championships.
one. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
I've just got one last question.
Sure.
Did Enter ever have like a current songbook or any songbooks of any kind? Because I'd love to try playing an Enter again in the SCA.
Other than the Elf Hill books that I've seen, which I think are SCA wise, I don't know if Ontier does. If anybody knows the answer to that, please give it. I haven't seen any.
I believe there is one, but unfortunately, I think it's copyrighted,
Okay.
and finding a copy is sometimes difficult.
Okay.
I used to see them all the time, like when I first started. That
Yeah.
was,
A million years ago.
yes.
So that might be a good question for on Facebook. Bards of Ontier is a Facebook group. There's something like 300 or 400 bards in there. So
Thanks.
I'm assuming somebody could answer that question out of 300 or 400 people. I would hope so. We've got a few bardic laurels on Ontier that are fabulous, and they would probably be better able to answer that question than I would be.
It does look like the Scald has just posted a link to Avacal's songbook. Look at that.
Thank you, Scald.
One-upping on tier.
Yes, yeah. Avacall, our little baby that got away. Avacall was our principality for those of you that are joining us out of Kingdom. And they left us, and now they're having events.
Oh, the wet and soggy host. Oh, I see how it's gonna be,
Oh,
Avacall. I see
so
how it's gonna be.
You built our song, huh?
Yes.
That's okay. I have how many filks? I have, I think, at least 3 filks in my head, and some of them even have partial lyrics.
Hey.
Right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I encourage people to contrafact as a way to get in there, write songs about your local barons and baronesses, your king and queen, events that happened, your friends, your households. It's a great way to get started. Even if you can't find songbooks or period pieces you like, it's always an easy and fun way, I think, to jump into a bardic circle. Is, hey, I wrote this song about, like I said, about watching the Crown Prince Silver Fox Sven nail some guy. Just so we have a 5 out of 9 here in on tier. You got to win 5 out of 9 in finals.
Right.
Only when we have a certain king.
Certain king. 5. He did 5 in a row. Boom, 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 boom. Inside of 4 minutes.
It was crazy. It was so crazy.
Holy.
Right.
Yeah, it's nuts. I've never seen anybody fight like that. So
yeah, Clovis kept yelling because I was, wandering around the house, and he'd be like, Sven just like walked up and smacked him and walked away. It was crazy.
Nailed him. Yeah.
It wasn't a 1 shot, it was a 3 shot.
He knocked somebody on his butt within 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I blinked and missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would make an amazing filk or poem. So use the resources around you, even if you can't find an SCA songbook, because that's what the early people were doing. The ancient Scadians did that. They wrote songs about their kings. We can do that too and make our own books.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Sometimes you ancient Scadians, yes, ancient Scadians, that works. But the yes. I always think that filks are appropriate in all contexts, but I know that is not always the case.
I wrote a filk for the Baron of Aquaterra, although he didn't ask for it and didn't know it. And I wrote it to Never Gonna Dance Again by the beloved George Michael. And it was called I'm Never Gonna Fence Again. Oh. And I sang it at their Yule feast and embarrassed the hell out of him. And he loved it. So do that.
I do have a plan.
Know your audience, though.
Know your audience. I am very close friends with the Baron of Aquaterra. And I basically, his little sister, and I can get away with this stuff. But it's fun. Write filks about your friends. Write your own songbooks. Write about your local customs in the SCA. I think it's a lot of fun.
Write about your intentions. I did a filk of part of your world about wanting to be a laurel.
There you go. That's brilliant. Part of your world to a bunch of laurels. Then you're a laurel. You're like, never mind.
Yeah, not anywhere near that yet.
I am going to hit end on the record.
Did you have any words that you wanted to say in closing before he cuts you off?
Oh, in closing, thank you so much for joining me. I do have some comedy videos on Bard tonight on YouTube and on my Facebook. Feel free to check those out. I interview funny people in on tier. Haven't done it in a while because my cup is a little empty, unfortunately. I was hoping I'd get to go to Crown last month and refill it a bit, but that was ended. But please keep creating. Please keep trying. I don't want to see anybody excluded from the Bardic arts. And real quick, if anybody tells you that you can't be a bard unless you're a singer, you can rightly tell them to sod off. Edit that if you want, but those are my feelings on this.
That is perfect. Thank you. I have to agree.